Imagine it is 40,000 years ago. You are hiding in complete darkness. Not the comfortable darkness of a bedroom, the darkness of a world where something is actively hunting you, something faster, stronger, and infinitely more patient than you are. Your heart is detonating inside your chest. Adrenaline is flooding every system in your body, screaming at your muscles to run, fight, move, but you cannot. Because moving means sound. Sound means death. So you stay frozen. 1 second, 10 seconds, a minute. The nervous system is redlining. The brain is one wrong thought away from a full psychological collapse. Every instinct you have is screaming and you cannot answer any of them. And then without conscious decision, your hand moves to your mouth. Your teeth bite down on the edge of your nail and something shifts. Not much, but enough. Enough to keep you from breaking apart in the dark. Here is what nobody has ever told you about that habit you have been ashamed of your entire life. It is not a nervous tic. It is not a sign of anxiety disorder. It is not weakness dressed up as a bad habit. It is a desperately engineered, ancient, self-soothing survival program built over hundreds of thousands of years to keep your ancestors from losing their minds in the most terrifying moments of human existence. And your brain is still running it today, right now. Let's talk about what ancient anxiety actually was. It was not the stress of an unanswered email. It was not the low-grade dread of a Monday morning. It was a constant, grinding, inescapable anticipation of death that never fully switched off. Because in the ancient world, the threat never fully went away. The predator you hid from last night might be back tonight. The weather that fed you last season could turn and kill you this one. The tribe member who looked at you wrong this morning could become a mortal threat by tomorrow. The human nervous system was engineered for one specific response to danger: explosive physical action. Run, fight, move. Burn the threat out of your system through sheer kinetic force. But what happens when survival requires the opposite of physical action? What happens when the only way to stay alive is to stay completely, perfectly, agonizingly still for hours while every biological alarm in your body is sounding at full volume? The nervous system has no release valve for that. The adrenaline has nowhere to go. The cortisol builds. The psychological pressure mounts to a level the brain simply was not designed to contain indefinitely. It needed a pressure valve. Something small, something localized. Something the body could do silently, that would give the overwhelmed nervous system just enough sensory input to distract it from the catastrophic noise happening inside. Biting the nail, chewing the cuticle. A controlled, contained, almost microscopic act of physical sensation in a moment where no other physical sensation was permitted. The pressure gauge needle drops, just slightly, just enough. But here is the part that is genuinely disturbing and genuinely brilliant. The anxiety management was only half the story. In the ancient world, long, jagged, unkempt nails were not just uncomfortable. They were a biological liability of the highest order. A torn nail while hunting. A snagged cuticle while climbing a rock face. A ragged edge catching on rough terrain in the dark. Any of these could result in an open wound, and in a world without antibiotics, without antiseptic, without any medical intervention whatsoever, an infected finger could kill you. Not metaphorically, not dramatically, literally. Infection spread, fever followed. And in a body already operating on the edge of its physical limits, it finished the job the predator started. Biting the nails kept them short, kept them clean enough to function, made the hands arguably the most important survival tool the human body possesses, less likely to fail at the worst possible moment. And then there is the theory that should make you deeply uncomfortable. Ancient hands were not clean. They were covered in soil, animal blood, environmental bacteria, and microscopic organisms that modern hygiene works hard to eliminate. And every time an ancient human bit down on a dirty cuticle, they introduced a small, controlled quantity of that microbial world directly into their digestive system. Not enough to cause disease, just enough to teach the immune system what it was dealing with. A primal vaccine, administered unconsciously, continuously, over a lifetime. The immune systems those ancient humans built raw, aggressive, broadly trained, were forged through exactly this kind of constant low-level exposure. They were obsessed with the habit, physically dependent on it, and completely unaware it was also quietly building them an immune system that modern science is still struggling to fully replicate. Now here is where the psychology goes deep. The act of biting a nail is repetitive. rhythmic, predictable, and the human nervous system responds to rhythmic, repetitive physical sensation. The way a drowning person responds to a rope, it grabs it. The repetitive friction of chewing triggers a mild but measurable endorphin release. It forces the jaw to engage, and jaw engagement activates a neurological calming response connected to the vagus nerve, which directly regulates heart rate and breathing. In plain terms, the act of biting the nail physiologically overrides the panic response. Not completely, not permanently, but enough to function, enough to think, enough to survive the next 60 seconds, which, in the ancient world, was often all that was required. And when it worked, when this tiny, silent, self-contained behavioral hack successfully pulled an ancestor back from the edge of psychological collapse, the brain saved the file. It stamped the behavior directly into the neural architecture. This worked. Prioritize this. Return to this under stress. And here's the part that natural selection made absolutely certain of. The ancestors who had this mechanism, who could self-regulate in terrifying silence, who could keep the nervous system from detonating during a predator encounter, survived those encounters. The ones who panicked, who broke the silence, who lost control of their nervous system at the critical moment. They did not. Over thousands of generations, across hundreds of thousands of years, the self-soothers outlived the panickers. Their children inherited the mechanism. The behavior burrowed deeper into the human operating system with every generation. The anxious nail-biters lived and built the entire modern world. Crash land back into 2026. No predator, no frozen darkness, no glacial wind stripping the heat from your body. Just you, in traffic, at your desk, in front of a screen, staring at something that is making your nervous system register a code-red threat response. And before you have consciously decided anything, your hand is at your mouth. Here's the psychological truth that changes everything. Your nervous system cannot distinguish between a predator and a deadline. It cannot tell the difference between an ice age winter and a hostile email chain. It does not have a filter for real threat versus modern artificial stress. It simply registers elevated cortisol, spiking heart rate, and an overwhelming physical urge to do something, and it reaches immediately for the oldest, most reliable tool in the archive. 2 million-year-old self-soothing code, executing perfectly, in a world it was never designed for. This is evolutionary mismatch. The hardware is ancient, the software is ancient, the stress is modern, the office building, the notification, the meeting, the deadline, all of that is extraordinarily new. A blink of an eye in evolutionary terms. But the brain doing the calculating underneath all of it, the brain pulling up that save file, triggering that endorphin loop, reaching for that pressure valve. That brain is still crouched behind a boulder in the dark, still listening for footsteps, still keeping you from falling apart at the seams. So the next time you catch your hand moving to your mouth in the middle of a tense meeting, at the climax of a stressful movie, in the silence of a 3 a.m. anxiety spiral, do not call it a bad habit. Do not call yourself broken. You are a modern human being running ancient survival code in a world your nervous system was never built to navigate. The anxiety is modern, the coping mechanism is ancient, and it kept every single one of your ancestors alive long enough to make you possible.